Arise for a strong dose of love, joy, laughter, and information for healthy living.
Well, we're living in our purpose because God put us on this earth. Our purpose on this earth was to encourage.
Thank you for joining Arise Show. I am LaTanya Smiley, and today I want to invite and welcome this extraordinary woman here, Sabrina Henry, the author of If All Wounds Were Visible. Welcome to the show, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. I had the opportunity to read most of the book, and I want to say to you that this took a lot of transparency, vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
How long has it been since you experienced domestic violence?
Okay, well, as this started, I want to say 1994.
Okay.
Then I decided to pen the book 2020. But I had started writing like bits and pieces of it like years ago. But then
Okay.
courage and to actually publish it. So
kind of, I know I'm skipping through some things, but I'm just curious in knowing the process it took for you to kind of relive those moments. And actually, most times when you are going back and reliving a traumatic time in your life, certain things come up that you didn't think about, that never surfaced until you start to revisit that. So take us through that whole process.
Well, like penning this book was actually seriously hard. I had to like start and stop several times and reflect on if I wanted to continue writing it. I also thought about what people would have thought about it and how it would impact other people's lives. And the main aim of the book was not to call out anyone in particular, but just to bring like a general view to how dangerous domestic violence is. And so throughout the book, I had to be very careful of like some of the things I would say and to also ensure I didn't name anyone in particular. But then folks who know me personally, they would have known automatically who I'm referring to. But then that's not my issue. My issue is to ensure that the general gist of the book, the main area of the book was to bring attention to domestic violence, because I do know people personally who have not survived it. And so that's the saddest part of it, because the physical marks and everything else, I don't think those are as serious as the emotional aspect and all the other things that you have to deal with. Because after like penning this book, I had several times that I cried, several times I got angry, several times that I smiled. And the main thing is that I'm happy that I'm here to talk about it.
Right.
I have interviewed like many women. I've only spoken to one gentleman who explained his situation. And of course, I didn't use their name because I want to protect their privacy. But I was really ready and, to be open about it, because I'm like, I know I'm very popular. And then the community that I grew up in, everyone knows our family. We were a very popular family. And I wanted them to see that there were things that were happening that weren't all flowers and beautiful stuff. So when I started penning this book and started speaking to other women, so many other women that I've known for a while, and when they open up about their experience, I realized, okay, I wasn't alone, and this was actually more popular than we know. And then I'm going to read like this one line from my introduction on page 7. It says here, global estimates published by WHO indicate that about 1 in 3 of women worldwide have experienced either physical and or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. And so it's been happening way before our time, but it doesn't matter that because it's so popular and been going on for so long, that is something that should be accepted. And some
Mhm.
women are afraid to speak about it. I would say men too, but the rate for women tends to be higher. And
Right.
people are afraid to speak about it. And some folks, based on like the situation that they're in or the position, they don't want their family to know or their friends to know because they seem like they're going to be attacked. That people will be saying that you call this unto yourself, and why didn't you do this, and why didn't you do that? And society tends to blame women for being in this situation, not knowing exactly what's happening behind scene, because some women, they have the chance to leave, some don't. I was watching a documentary with it was some interview they were doing in Australia, and there were a lot of women who reported the reason why they did not leave soon enough. And one lady, when she tried to leave, her husband actually broke into their house and killed their children. And so there are serious complications in this situation. It's easy for some to leave, it's not easy for some. But it took me a while to really build up the courage to say, you know what, I'm getting this book out there. I'm going to save somebody's life. And actually, I've had several people that have reached out to me personally, also via phone call, email, Facebook, many other means to let me know that they have experienced this. And some of them are still going through it, but they're finding means to get out of it. And some of them have developed the courage to actually leave. So the purpose of the book has been served to
Mhm.
people to understand that you can get out of it, and you can um, grow from it. Don't let this experience keep you in one spot to believe that, hey, this happened to me and now I'm stuck. You can move on and grow from it. And this book was kind of a like part of my therapy.
Okay.
So yeah, to get me to, yes, relive it a certain way, but I also learned that I'm not gonna be going through this again, and I will not be accepting it by any means. And I can see red flags, and I know how to identify them now. I am older and wiser, and I'm able now to guide other women and men to say, this is not good for you. You can leave. Yeah.
Right. Now let's start from the part of the beginning, because I like how you mentioned your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how you carried us through your childhood, not in details, but you gave to me, this is what I got. You gave the image of a little girl,
Mm-hmm.
an innocent little girl who just had this image of the perfect
Boyfriend.
boyfriend,
Mhm.
the typical image that you have of your boyfriend when you are a little girl, and and also you watching other girls with their boyfriend. So that's when the imagination come in. That's when the fantasy come in of how you kind of want you want your boyfriend to treat you, and how that image of. And I love how you started there. What's your intake on that?
All right. So the reason I started that way was to show people how your childhood can impact your adult life. So some of that is that when you're a child, your brain, is not fully developed, obviously. You're seeing things on the television, you're seeing things in your home, and you're learning all the different aspects of what life could be or is supposed to be or something like that. But then also there's a side of it which would be including lack of guidance. So you're seeing things on television, you're seeing maybe somebody in your family being abused in some sort of way, gaslighting, could be physical and emotional and stuff. But you at that time you're not understanding it. So you're thinking this is probably the norm. So you're growing up with this, with all these images and ideas in your mind, and then you're looking for your love, and then you're young, so your mind is all wrapped around this person, and you're not giving yourself enough time to understand what life is about, and then you're not getting enough guidance from the adults around you. And so when you're seeing certain things as a child, you're growing up with that idea that, you know what, it's okay for this person to yell at you, because as a child you also had adults in your household yelling at you and telling you you're not this, you're not that. And then you're wondering, part of it also, I was trying to wonder, like, maybe those adults, they had situations in their life growing up too, which end up becomes a cycle. And we have to be careful of this as humans, because these cycles can impact other, your own children, your grandchildren, and stuff like that. And then you have to be mindful that you're trying to break this cycle, break the chain, because you don't want to pass on this hurt. So
Right.
yeah, because it can become a learned behavior. And then also you talk about spanking and other forms of corporal punishment, which are, seriously damaging to children. And so maybe growing up, you're being hit. And so you think it's okay. So when you're with somebody now that you think supposed to be loving you, because the people in your life as a child were hitting you and they're supposed to be loving you, so you think it's okay. So then you become this young adult, you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and the person hitting you or shouting at you and doing dangerous stuff to you, you don't see it as a big alarm because you are already used to this type of,
Accustomed to being hit.
yeah. And so you kind of accept it, not realizing that it's damaging, So that's why I started from there, just to show a background of how.
Because you mentioned the hitting part, and
Mhm.
I remember reading about you were talking to this little boy, and your aunt came over getting ready to beat you for talking to the little boy. You just a little girl, or a teenager,
Right.
and innocent, and they're getting ready to come and hit you, and someone intervened and stop
Right. And
you.
that's what I'm saying. And most of our punishments growing up were pretty much public. They'll embarrass you in public and stuff like that. And so at some point you feel like you become numb to it, because it was so popular in the
Mhm.
household. Because my dad has never hit any of us. He never yelled,
Right.
nothing. But then I don't know what his background was like, because he was an orphan. We have never met anyone from his side. But then there are other people in your family that they abused you. And you don't know it's called abuse. You don't know at that time. But then
Exactly.
as you get wiser, you're realizing, oh, this was actually abuse.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so
When you get older, and you are able to identify those feelings you had when it was happening at that time. So
right,
you're like, I didn't like when mother hit me or beat me for that. You again, you're able to recognize that feeling, because
right.
now you're able to put a definition to
What
those feelings.
right. But then back then you didn't have that qualification, or it was seen as children do not talk back. And that's the thing that people are not understanding, that children defending themselves is not actually you're talking back. You're defending yourself because you're supposed to, you know.
Right. So
So
do you feel like, um because your story growing up is not strange to many of us.
all right, yeah.
Yeah, to many of us.
Mhm.
So do you feel that maybe did you get anyone to actually talk to you? Because we talked about your idea of a boyfriend, but
Right.
did anybody ever sit down and say, this is what you should look for in a man, this is what you should not deal with a man? No.
No, I mentioned that in the book too. There was
Mm-hmm.
there was never any official meeting or discussions or anything like that. It was more of yelling and shouting, don't go talk to this boy, he's gonna get you pregnant,
Exactly.
don't let anyone. There was never any official discussions to say, you're growing up, these are possibilities, nothing. It was a family of just constant battles and yelling and fussing. There were uncles, aunts. It was a huge household. And then you might have smaller households that are engaging in the same things, because there's just a lot of brokenness in many families. Some people don't
Mhm.
want to talk about it because they think it's going to bring embarrassment to their family. But I think the more open you are with it, the more you're helping others to see how damaging this can be. There was never anyone who sat down to say, what is happening isn't okay. Don't try to do this or that. Everyone was just living their own lives. And then the minute they see something going on with you, they'll just yell and fuss. But there was never any, okay, if a guy should come to you and say da, 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 it was never anything like that.
And which is very helpful.
Mm.
It would be very helpful to
Mhm.
give um, either your son or your daughter an ideal of, and that starts very, and that's right, it starts very young with
Right.
building relationship, this friendship. So then you'll know, starting with friendship, how you should, what type of friends are healthy, friendships are healthy, and
Right.
what type of friendships are not healthy. What kind of people you should have around you, and what you should not. And you're right, and parents, adults, aunts, guardians need to have more conversations, showing, instead of, like you said, beating them out of it or yelling it out of them, or just kind of telling them, no, don't do it. You need to say why and what to look for.
And then some of the men too, and even the girls, if they grow up and they're in the household and they'll see like the man punching their mom or something, it can also cause them to believe, you know what, this is okay. If I
Right.
ever grow up and have a woman and she's talking to me about something, or she's mad at me about something, then I can just punch her out. So you're teaching the child indirectly that this is one of the ways that you solve problems. And then this
Right.
child can internally, grow up and think that this is okay, and then start doing the same thing, and then their children will see it. And so we have to be very careful about the actions that we are showing around our children, because they're seeing it and they're learning it. They may not say anything, but they're understanding that, okay, this is the type of discipline that takes place.
Right.
So
I want to read, because we're moving on to the actual relationship.
right.
And there was something that I noticed in this paragraph, and I want to know if you even remember your mindset at that time. So you said, I was content. I was confident to be seen with my boyfriend. I was pretty sure he felt the same. I was easy. I'm sorry. It was easy for me to openly introduce him to any new friends or acquaintances. I did my best to make him feel valued. I jumped to his defense against the suggestions of any unkind words. He was shielded with my trust, assuming all relationships prospered on the base of trust. I figured we were good in that department. And you have that italicized. I'm sorry, and oh God, yeah, you have it italicized. I trusted him, and I gave him absolutely no reasons not to do the same for me. Telling him the truth was never a problem. Matter of fact, I hid absolutely nothing from him. I was an open book. He knew my every move. Heck, I always let him in on everything.
Yeah. Even listening to you reading it now, I can actually see some things like going back then. I can actually picture exactly what was going on. So,
So what? Wait, one moment is what I just want to say. I notice everything is about what you are doing. What you explain all of that.
right, so actually that means I achieved what I wanted to achieve. So the aim was to get folks to see that I was the one putting in all this effort, because I was the one blind enough not to see what was going on. So being that my household was so, child, just full of trauma and a whole lot of arguments and stuff all the time, it would be a situation where I'm searching for attention and love outside of the home, because you're not getting that inside your home. So you're going to search for it elsewhere. And so he was there, and not that he was giving me all the attention I was hoping for, but he was there. And so we were living close to each other. And so going by his house or seeing him to talk to him was like my escape mechanism. And so we became so close. And he was older than me, but for some reason, it seemed like I was more mature than him in certain facets. And it seemed to me like things just didn't bother him because he had different intentions, I guess. But my intentions were to basically be his girlfriend and to ensure that we're having this union. And you're trying to make others see that you're so in love. So even if he's hurting you, you're covering it up because you don't want to be seen as this beautiful girl being hurt by this man, and you're in love. So there's no way this is happening. And then also on the television shows, you'll see always these perfect families. You never see people being in a riff and stuff. It's always these perfect families. So you're trying to portray that image also, and then you're young. And so you're in love. You really think you're in love. And so every move that this person makes, it's like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. So you're not taking the time to understand that some of these things that the person is doing, they're hurtful to you because
Right.
you're giving this person all your attention and you're not getting back enough of it. And then all the lies. So you're trusting the person. So all the things that they're telling you, you're going to believe it because you're so in love.
Right.
And
You're
so
gonna make yourself believe it.
yeah, you make everything believable. They're like, I'm going down the street. And you're like, okay, I'm just looking forward to see you come back. And because they came back, you're thinking, okay, that means they did nothing wrong. But then as you mature and stay in the relationship, you're realizing that it's like one-sided, sort
Yes.
of, And I know people who are going through this now in their adult life, like, because I always say, because you're inside the bottle, you're not able to read the label. So
Right.
people be seeing it because I remember my grandma used to say, leave that boy alone. And I just
Yes.
thought she was just being jealous. I'm like, what is your problem? And
Right.
when I was writing the book, I was reflecting on my grandma's life.
Yes.
There were times when she would mention bits and pieces of things that happened to her because
I want.
her children's father at the time, he had broken her arm like
Yes.
years before I was born. And then he had done many other things to her and stuff. So I learned about these things as I was getting older. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So they didn't really talk about it. It wasn't anything that people warn you about or talk about it. It was like it happened and we're all living and it's okay. So there was no one really saying, guess what? Don't let this happen to you. Stay away from this kind of, you know what I'm saying? So you being in
Right.
love and everything just overshadows that. You care about nothing else but that person.
Yeah, I wanted to get to the part of, with your grandmother, like you actually uh you know your grandma's finding out that your grandmother had gone through the
Mhm.
same thing
Right,
that you were going through,
right.
and how helpful that would have been to
It,
know that.
yeah, it surely would have been helpful. And then um I didn't like the grandfather. I can't even, may his soul rest in peace now, but I didn't like him after learning about the things that he has done to her as well as her children. And so I see behaviors in them that kind of let me realize that a lot of it has to do with how they were raised and things that happened to them. So they have that anger built up inside of them.
Hmm.
And so it comes out in their behaviors and how they spoke to us and stuff like that. So like I said, it can be a cycle. So we have to
Yes.
be very vigilant about how we are dealing with our own children because parts of us from our trauma can be passed on to them.
Right, 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 right.
So yeah, so I'm trying to speak to our children now about things like these and talk to our daughters and sons about keeping your hands to yourself. If you're not working out with someone, it's always best for you to leave because you don't have any rights to that person. You don't own them. You can be with somebody, but you're not owning them. And that's what's happening in a lot of these abusive relationships. The people are seeing their partners as like properties and
Properties.
a property. So if you break up with someone, because even after I broke up with this guy, I thought I was free, but I was never free. He would still trail me or track me and find out where I was and what I'm doing, where I'm going, and then still come and try to hurt me. And I'm like, I was so confused because I didn't understand if you're not with someone or you're giving the person enough evidence to say, okay, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. And you're here and you're there. Why are you still tracking the person to hurt them? And that's what happened in a lot of abusive relationships. I know of a lady personally who used to live close by my old house in Jamaica. And she had broken up with this guy. And he came by somewhere where she was sitting, told her to come with him. He wants to speak with her. And she went with him and he shot her and also killed himself. So both lives are gone. So
Right.
and this was a very calm guy, and everyone would say the same thing. Oh, he's so soft, he's so the same thing with my abuser. They would be like, oh, he's so soft, he's so sweet. You never can tell.
You can never tell.
Never know.
Now, this part here, you said, as we played and enjoyed ourselves, someone called me at her gate. I looked out and it was my boyfriend. I went out to meet him and we stood by the gate and spoke for a little. I don't remember what it was about, but he got suddenly angry and then stepped in the yard and grabbed me. I tried to run, but he stepped on my foot. Don't forget that I had previously mentioned his hokey frame to my petite one. Yeah, imagine that. He dragged me back to the back of the yard, and he went on to describe working on figuring out. Then you said, this is the part. I didn't want to scream or create
A scene.
So I kept talking softly,
Mm-hmm.
working on figuring out what was causing this again. Such a victimized mindset. I'm still, now you're the one who's being beaten, and you're still trying to find out what is causing this, when really it's like nothing, there's no reason to cause this at any cost.
Exactly. And that's another thing that I found out while writing this book, and then while speaking to other women that endured this. And the gentleman I spoke to while writing this book also, who gave his information about what happened to him, he was abused twice by different women. And so what happened is that it's like you find yourself in a similar situation because you're searching for this comfort, but then not taking the time to realize that, yes, you're searching for that, but are you taking time to find out about the person you're trying to be with? So I had given this guy like several chances to prove to me that he had plans to change. And of course, like I said, I was too young to understand that some things are just not possible. And then the part of the reason behind his behavior was of things happening with him, not necessarily anything I was doing, because I was at a friend's house, and I can remember clearly we were playing Scrabble because she was my close friend. And when I would leave the house, I would go by her house and stay. And even though my family would assume I was with some boyfriend or whatever, I was just by her house playing games. And I can remember that day when he stepped on my feet, and I'm trying to like get back into the house to get away. And I'm like, why are you so angry? And he was just full of rage because he had jealousy. And I think part of it was because he knew of things that he was doing.
Right,
So,
exactly.
and you're turning around your issues onto me. And so I become your sounding board for you to, you're doing something wrong. So you want it to seem as if, it's like a narcissistic behavior. So you want me to feel like I am the one guilty of something.
Right.
And I had long flowing hair at the time. So when he's holding me in my hair, I'm 5'4" and he's like 6'4". So you're twirling me around. There's nothing I can do. And I could hear my girlfriend in the room screaming, let her go. Let her go. And she's also afraid. And then she's also trying not to get involved in some type of way because he was also her friend. And so you're in this predicament of trying to be friends to both parties, as well as she was also getting some type of abuse from her boyfriend.
Exactly.
But she tended to be more subtle about hers because you have some people, they go through things silently.
Right.
Ooh, I tried that for a lot of times in my life, but I'm a person who believes that I'd rather deal with it openly and speak about it and write about it, sing about it, cry about it, whatever, and then we can deal with the consequences later. But I want it to be known. I was embarrassed, of course I was, and that was part of the reason why I didn't speak about it back then, because people were seeing it, and I'm thinking, okay, you saw it. Are you helping me in any way?
Right.
I shouldn't be blaming them for it, but I was hoping at some point that someone would have stepped in and say, hey, this isn't right.
Right.
But domestic violence have so much delicate parts to it. But I really believe that people need to step in. It doesn't matter, step in and say something. Another flip side to that part of the coin is that you have some people who will step in and then the person being abused will go back to their abuser. And so it can be a very sticky situation, but I keep encouraging people to leave when you can. Leave when it is safe. And I always say leave when it is safe, because I've known people who try to leave, and once their abuser found out that they were leaving, they
would.
harmed them like even more. There's another lady, I remember hearing the story. It was about 5 years ago, and she was leaving from her husband who was abusing her, and she was just over it. And she's leaving, and her dad came to help her move out of the house. And her husband shot her to death right there in front of him.
Wow.
You see, the abusers, they tend to become very nervous and anxious when you're leaving them, because they realize that they no longer have any control.
They're losing control.
Yeah, so they're losing control when you're becoming better. And I have a friend who actually had to run away from the country, because her husband would come to her workplace with tools to harm her. And he threatened her life many times, and she had to literally run away, go on a plane and get away, because some people you can get away from them within certain distance, and some you have to definitely flee for your own life, because they'll tell you they're not going to do it again. My grandma told me, yeah, once they start, it's not going to stop. And that was for real.
So going back to the image you had, you had you painted in the book about the childhood, and it was a good thing you started with the childhood stage, because the point is no one is born asking to be beaten.
Right.
Which takes me to the point that you made, that people need to say something. Because when you mention about wives or husband going back to the abusive relationship, on the outside, you're looking like people are saying, well, maybe that's what he wants. Maybe that's what she likes. And so it's chalked up as, okay, that's what she likes. That's what he likes. But I just love how you correlated that with your childhood. Nobody is born wanting to be beaten. Right. Everybody wants to be treated right. And so when they go back to the abusive relationship, it's not that they like it.
They become conditioned to it. It can be something that you become conditioned to, because it's just like with a child. If you're speaking to the child about something they're doing wrong and you're always yelling, the day that you choose to be soft and say, hey, don't do it this way, the child is not going to listen, because they're so conditioned to you yelling. So they're going to try to figure out, why aren't you yelling now? Because you've conditioned the child to think that this is the norm. And then there's also this belief that when a man hits you, they really love you. And that was something I used to hear growing up. And, it wasn't.
Oh, yes.
I would take seriously, because at the time I was like, people don't know what's happening to me, so why should I even be worried about it? And I remember one day speaking to this lady older than me, and she was also going through abuse, but she would laugh about it. And I remember saying to her, that cannot be right. And she said, oh, girl, don't worry about it. If the man doesn't hit you, he doesn't love you. And that thing left several things sparking off in my brain. But then I got distracted by other things going on in life and didn't really think about it much. But then when I was writing the book, I'm like, how could people actually believe that someone hitting you means that they love you? And that's a hard pill to swallow. It's really, really hard. And there are many people staying in their situation because they actually believe the person is trying to make them better, which also goes back to beating your children. You're telling them they're doing something wrong, and so you're spanking them and hitting them and pushing them and saying, oh, whatever. So you're making them think, okay, I'm trying to help you to do better. Is this the way to do it? Right. And you grew up thinking, okay, they're trying to make me do better. So it's domestic violence is never okay. That's the whole point of this. It's never okay. And it can start really, really young. And mine started when I was 16. And yet I spoke to other women, and they weren't even women then. I wasn't even a woman then either, but I was mature in certain ways.
Yes.
I spoke with someone who she was being hit by her boyfriend when she was 14. And so I kept thinking I was the youngest one. And then each time I speak to someone else and hear their experience, I'm like, OMG, and then to be beaten when you're pregnant, that's a whole nother story. You know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
a lot of people learned of this after I wrote about it in the book, because I kept it to myself. And then I said, no, I want people to know there are certain pieces and bits that I left out, because I didn't want to delve too deep into that. I wanted to stay on the road of discussing domestic violence.
Right.
So I wasn't married to this person. And we were together for years, and it just got worse, just in different ways, apart from the gaslighting and whatever, the hitting and all that kind of thing. That also impacted my life when I started my other relationship. So when I was getting with my husband, it was very hard for us, even though I've known him for a long time. It was hard for him to talk to me about trying to have a relationship, because I was like, I'm going to take my time to figure out what is going on. I had so much trust issues based on what happened to me with that situation, because I was so deeply involved with that guy that I thought he was the world. And so for him to do so much hurtful things, it took a whole lot of work on myself before I could get involved with somebody else. And I
Yes.
kept waiting to say, when are you going to start the mess? When are you going to start the hitting? When are you going to start? So I'm prodding him to give me that, because he's looking at me like, you're crazy. But then he realized it is what happened in my past that was affecting me, and I had to give myself time to heal. It takes time. So you have to take time to believe that you did not deserve it, and to understand that what that person did to you is not your fault. It was something going on with them.
Right.
So it took a lot of things to heal. And then sometimes when you have flashbacks, you have to gather your composure and realize that, hey, it's okay now,
Right.
you're no longer in that situation. So you
Wow.
find different ways to comfort yourself. And so because of what happened to you, you're now able to see other folks in the situation, and you can tell to the T that they're being abused. You can tell what is going on, and you're like really hoping that they will just get out of it, because it's only going to get worse. It never gets better.
At what point did he became physical?
That was very early on in our
Yeah.
relationship, because we started seeing each other when I was 16.
Yeah.
And it was like few months after that, I was speaking to a guy, and I wrote about it in the book, a guy from the community. And then, I'm not bragging, but being this beautiful girl, people
Yes.
are always trying to talk with me.
Right.
And so I was always hesitant about talking to them, because I'm very friendly, but at the same time, I was like, oh my God, I don't want anyone to think that I'm being with this person. So we could be there talking about baking bread or something, and this guy would be so upset, or just thinking that, okay, she's trying to talk to this person. That's because you're guilty of something. You think I'm guilty of something too. And this guy, I can remember clearly, I don't remember his name now, but I remember he was a firefighter, and he was talking to me, and he said he knew the guy had been liking me for a while. And I'm like, okay, but we're not exchanging anything that would relate to that. We're talking about work and stuff. And that was the first day that he actually punched me in my stomach. And I was so shocked that I quickly forgave him, because I was like, okay, you know what, Sabrina, you shouldn't have been speaking to that guy. So at that point, I was giving myself the blame that it's something you must have done to trigger him. And then I realized, okay, everything became a problem. And then it started to become the norm.
Yes.
Where when you were guilty of something, you would come and take that out on me. I couldn't have any friends. And that's also one of the mechanism of control. And people don't understand that domestic violence and violence in general can happen in so many different ways. It's not just
So many different ways.
there's emotional, there's psychological, there's so many ways. Because I remember when I did this major exam in Jamaica, and I had passed, even though I had so much going on, I was determined that I had to, pass these subjects. And I remember I was so happy when I got the results. And he said it's because the teachers liked me. That's why I passed. And I felt so
Wow.
down, because I was hoping that this person would have been happy for me. But here you are again telling me it's because of not anything I did, but how I looked and whatever caused this to happen. So that was another form of abuse too.
Right.
So you were there. I was there dedicating myself to him, not realizing I was getting nothing in return. I was hoping that, okay, he loves me and whatever.
Right.
But you live.
Now you mentioned that it's not too late to change.
Mm-hmm.
When you're saying that it's not too late to change, is this for the abuser or
Or the
the
victim.
or the victim?
You know, I remember when I was writing that, and I had so many things I was thinking about, and I said, you know what? Some abusers, they just go on and they get worse. I've heard about a few that have changed. I'm not sure if it's that they changed their victims or they don't have access to them anymore, or something happened in their life where they got maybe punishment, they're in jail or something that caused them to change. But I do know that the victims can change their lives. The abusers, yes, they have a chance of changing too, but it's going to take a lot of internal work, and they're going to have to really reflect on why they're doing this and what is the purpose behind it. I don't know if narcissists can change, because I do know a lot of abusers, they have narcissistic ways. I don't think that's possible. But the victims, you'll have to change your grounds, change where you're standing, change the way you're going to interact with this person. You can't be soft with everybody. And you have some people, they start out by showing you red flags like really early. So you're going to have to decide, how am I going to interact with this person? Am I going to stay with them and take it and then hope that they make a change, or am I going to leave? But some people are best left alone.
Right. But definitely, we don't want to place ourselves in harm's way, waiting for someone to change.
Exactly.
And because it's like I would tell anyone, it's not my job to tell you to leave your husband or to tell you to do whatever, but understanding that everything is a process. It's a process with all of us. And when you think about where you are now mentally, compared to where you were years ago, it was a process. It didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And no one knew when that process, when it was going to happen, but you were going through that process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it is with an abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a process. We don't know how long that's going to take, when that person is going to come to the notion that you need to love yourself and love others. But understanding, if you stay there, you're going to have to go through that process with that person.
Right. And whatever form that may take.
And whatever form that may take.
So you have to,
which is unpredictable.
Right. And that's what I keep telling people who are in these situations. I said, think about it this way. How about you start loving yourself and seeing yourself as deserving better? Because there's always someone else out there that is better, always.
Exactly.
And I remember one day, I can remember that the clothes I was wearing, because I have a very vivid memory and I have great memory. I can remember the clothes I was wearing and everything. And he had this woman, she was years older than me. He had this woman he was seeing, and I found out about it. And so we were there together, all three of us. And it was such a weird, awkward situation. And I said to him, you have to make a choice. And he did say there in front of me, I'm choosing her. Do you know how painful that was? So when he said this, I thought I was finished. I thought my life was over. And I remember leaving and walking out of his yard, leaving both of them there. And I'm going up the street to go to my house. I couldn't tell what emotion I was enduring. I just know it was painful, but I couldn't really, there was so much things happening. And I remember this lady that was living next door to him. I'll never forget that lady. I was walking past and she said, Etan, because at that time, that's my pet name. They used to call me Etan. She said, Etan, what are you crying about? What is happening? And I told her, he broke up with me and I don't think I can do this anymore. And she said, oh, don't worry about it. There's always somebody better. One day in life, you're going to find this lovely man. And I looked at her like she's crazy. I'm like, you don't even understand this.
Because you couldn't see that.
You're not seeing that. And I was so much tears and pain and agony. And I said, this lady, she doesn't mean me any well because she doesn't understand this is the person I'm to be with. And lo and behold, yes, I have my husband now. We've been together for 15 years. Well, married for 15 years, but we've known each other for over 40 years. And nothing close to what I endured. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm in a dream. This guy wouldn't even yell at me. And sometimes I'm like, are you even for real? Because I'm so used to that, thinking that was the okay thing.
Right.
He doesn't yell. We're having an argument, no one would know. But then with that guy, there was always an explosion of some kind, So it is such a remarkable difference. And I have other friends too who have left their abusers, and I can see the change in their lives, their skin tone, the way they speak, the way they walk, and like the things that they decide to do in life.
Like a big load off for you.
You didn't realize that your life you were dedicating to the abuse. You didn't realize how much of it was taken up. It became a part of you. And when you let that part of you go, you're like a brand new person.
It's like there's a lift, not off your shoulders. There's a lift off your soul.
Your soul, your whole emotional being. The way you see yourself, everything.
Yeah. So let's come up to now, because you do have a beautiful, beautiful family. You have your husband, you have your daughter, and you have your son. So with all of that you've gone through, and with all that, your husband knowing what you've gone through and being a man, you both now you have a boy and you have a girl to raise. So how does all of that take place in raising your daughter and your son now?
Right.
So the roles and the interaction.
Right. So we actually have 2 sons and 2 daughters.
I'm sorry, 2 sons.
Right. So the oldest one is 22, other one is 19, one is 13, and one is 4. So they're all like years apart. So we try to raise them to be close and to also not to try to get physical with anyone, and to let them understand that, hey, you do not own anyone. And there are many ways that you can solve a problem. Many ways you can solve a problem without hitting someone and, yelling and fighting and fussing. So because we grew up in such a tumultuous household where there was always fights and stuff, we try to make sure our household now is nothing like that.
So did both of you came from the same type of background?
Well, his pretty much, but he didn't get as much as I did because he had a smaller family.
Okay.
But then he's aware of some of the abuse in different ways, and then coming from a broken home also, because dad was here, so that kind of thing. But then he's more of a mild-mannered person, and he was in the army, and they trained them to not do certain things and to approach certain things a certain way. And so he has all that training and also his personality that we try to get on together as a unit to say, hey, so if I'm thinking of, okay, we could punish them this way, he would say, maybe Sabrina, we could do it this way. So we tend to discuss these things and see what would be the best way to approach this and see how it's going to impact the children. They've never heard us yell at each other because we try not to, because of course all marriages are going to have arguments and stuff, but they've never heard us argue about anything serious. It would be something in the kitchen or something that we can just laugh about afterwards, but we try to make sure that we're setting examples for them so that they can see, hey, I know the boys especially will see that there's no way they're supposed to grow up and hit no woman because they never see their father doing that and they never heard him yelling at her for no reason.
Right.
So they're seeing this and learning this and realizing this is something I could do or should do. So we're hoping that they will stay that way and grow into their own to understand that how relationships work. It doesn't need to involve any kind of violence.
Right.
And same thing with our daughters. We're trying to get them to understand that, hey, there is nothing you could do that's going to warrant a man putting his hand on you in a certain way, unless he's hugging you. But he shouldn't be grabbing you and pushing you and tossing you and doing stuff to you that you don't deserve. So we're ensuring that we're working this into them to get them to seriously understand that these things, you're not a property to anyone. You know, stand up against it, even if you know your friends are enduring it. Stand up against it. Try to be the change that you want to see. Be a real change, not just sit and talk about it and whatever.
Right.
part of my hope also is to become a spokesperson. Like I want to speak about this more in more forums and, get people to understand, because I remember one lady I was talking to, when I told her I have endured physical abuse and stuff, and she was like, I mean, a beautiful girl like you. So there's this assumption that because you're pretty or because you're smart or because you live in a certain house or
and where did that assumption come from? We got to do that research. Where did that assumption come from?
It's just a thing. It's the same way when someone would see Amara crying in the store and they'd be like, oh, you're too beautiful to be crying. I'm like, will you all stop saying this? I mean,
right.
You're beautiful or whatever you guys consider to be ugly or whatever. We still have emotions. Like, what are you talking about? But
right.
You're doing it so
exactly
consciously that you're not realizing.
Right.
Because this guy that was abusing me is so quiet. And
yes.
so people were of this assumption, and he smiles a lot, like he's so handsome and just smiles a lot. And so it's not easy for people to see that and be like, there's no way he was doing that. So
right.
when it's in the book now, I have friends who really contact me and they're like, oh my God, Sabrina, all this time you were going through that. Yes, because I was smiling through it. I didn't want to come out crying every day and making it seem as if I'm sad. I had to put on that facade and that image to make it seem like we were having a happy life. And I do know women who are doing that right now.
Yes. And and what you can bring to the table is that because it started with you at a very young age, and it shows that abuse starts young and it's getting younger and younger.
Oh, yes.
Every day. You can see it in middle school that how the abuse starts. And so in that sense, you can bring a lot to the table. Right. Because it's like we said, we think it's, when we become adults. No, it starts very young.
That's very young.
And it needs to be addressed as young as possible.
And even before it starts, you want to talk to your children about these things.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of young girls who are with boys now who just a few months ago, there was a guy, he was 22 and he killed his girlfriend. It's in Jamaica, but there are many cases happening all over the world. And she decided to leave him and he stabbed her to death. And her dad said he saw some red flags. And then when she tried to leave, that was his way of saying, no, you can't leave. You see what I'm saying? So these things you have to look out for. And then parents have to be a little bit more vigilant in protecting their children, because some of these guys and some of these girls are also abusive too. They have issues going on with themselves, and if they don't get those taken care of, they're gonna continuously going around and harm others. So, and then there's this thing now where people will kill you and then kill themselves because they don't want to deal with the consequence. So that's
exactly.
You see, and they'll hurt their pets. When I was writing the book, I was doing a lot of research because I'm like, there has to be more to this. And then I realized I didn't even have to do like deep research with folks I didn't know. I was speaking to people around me that I had no clue that were being abused because they were going through it so nicely.
Right. It was accepted.
Yeah. And when they expressed to me, I realized that, oh my gosh, some of these people actually endured more than what I thought was happening to me. Because when I said I was hit when I was pregnant, of course the child survived and everything and all of that. But then I had another lady I spoke to who she was actually kicked down the stairs while she was close to the time to have her child. And she was bleeding profusely, thought she was going to lose a child. The child is still alive now and she's also alive too. So, thankful for that. But you're looking like, okay, this person doing this abuse, are you thinking about the unborn child? Are you thinking about that? You're thinking all these things, and people would think, okay, you're pregnant, so there's no way they're going to do that. No.
Right.
At that point in time, their brains are not thinking about that.
They're not thinking.
The control that they're getting to exert and get their way. I'm trying to hurt because whatever and get the hurt done, and that's it, because this person is supposed to see me as the upper. They're supposed to respect me and understand that I rule. I am the ruler, and they're in denial. Some of these abusers are in such denial. Like at one point, I started wondering if something was wrong with my brain, because this guy would tell me, I didn't do this to you. And I had to sit down and really believe to myself that, oh my goodness, this is for real. And even that statement is also a form of abuse. You're trying to control me again to believe that I'm crazy. And then I realized others would tell me the same thing, that their abusers told them the same thing. You're crazy. This didn't happen. They have video evidence. They have the marks on their bodies. And I remember one day when he was trying to hit me, there were a group of us standing, and one of his friend, who's also a common friend to both of us, was saying, "No, stop doing that, man." And they saw, a few of them did see it. You know what I'm saying? So what are you saying that you didn't do it? It's you're thinking that you being in that denial is gonna convince me that it happened to me.
Right.
I had to get to a point where I had to understand that, hey, I have no control over what you believe happened or didn't happen. I only have control over what I know happened and me moving forward. So you can stay in that belief and do whatever you want to do.
That denial.
But I'm going to stay with mine and proceed and trying to make sure that I help others, because I did not know that this thing was so prevalent. It's like you hear about bits and pieces of it here and there, but then when I started to research more of it and so on, I know women who have lost their sight due to domestic violence. I know women who have like been burnt to you can't even recognize them. And you're just thinking, it's a one-time thing. Just recently, I was watching the news and this lady was stabbed in her abdomen because she decided to leave her abusive boyfriend. And he told her that he was going to kill her. And he came and he stabbed her and her intestines came out. And this is a young girl. She's 22 years old. And I'm like, at 22 years old, why are you even enduring this? Why are you even enduring this as a human being overall? You know what I'm saying? And then it went to the court, and she's now begging the court to free him and not charge him because she loves him.
Right.
See, that's the part that get a lot of people messed up. They're not loving themselves enough to understand that this
yes. That you do not deserve to be treated bad, regardless.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like nothing that is to the point of understanding. I don't care what you do. You do not deserve to be beaten,
right,
abused
mm-hmm.
in any way. And
we have to be I think some people still see it as they're not understanding the seriousness of it. And so it's just a little hit.
Right.
Just a little hit can do a lot of damage. Just a little slap, just a little this, it's a lot of damage to the brain and to your soul and your body and everything. I mean, I have a few marks, but those are nothing to me compared to the things I had to process and get over to get on to the next step.
Right.
To stay following behind him and hoping he's going to change, and then
right.
losing myself even more in the process. And then he still would have been doing the same thing. You still would have been having all the other women and doing whatever. You know what I'm saying? And then someone said to me, "Oh, you know what happened to you usually in life is what you allow." And I'm like, well, that could be part of it. And then part of it also is your lack of experience, and then not having enough knowledge and enough resilience to understand that these things are not okay.
You know, I want to ask you. I was trying to bring it to a close, but this is so good. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, in the midst of everything, in the midst of the relationship and your emotions, and although you know that you knew that you were being abused, could there have been anything anyone could have said or done to motivate you to move, to get out that situation? What had to occur first? Or could exactly that right there, could anyone have changed that for you?
Well, that's the thing. We were a very popular couple, I would say. And so we were in this youth club where we had common friends. I remember one of my friends, we're still very good friends. I remember her saying to me one day when I tried to tell her, I didn't give her all the details because it was so embarrassing. So, and also I didn't want him to be painted as this bad person. I wanted it to seem as if we were just having a moment. And so, maybe something's going to change.
Right.
I remember her saying to me, why don't you leave him? And she's about 2 years older than me. And she said, why don't you leave him? And I was so annoyed. I mean, there's a part of me that really believed that what she's saying is true. But then there was also a part of me that was like, she is so not right. Why would she want me to leave this man that I love so much? Because at
Right.
this point, you're not understanding the dangers of what's going on with you. Somebody else is seeing it. And so I said it to him one day, we were in a better place, kind of like we weren't having an argument. So I was saying to him, so and so said to me, I should leave you. And he took it a different way, and he took it back to her and make it seem as if I was being malicious. So he abused the whole situation again. So even though I had my grandma that was saying to me, this guy doesn't mean you any good, I was like, who are you to tell me anything when you had this man that she has 7 children for this man that was abusing her for most of her life. But then maybe she was in a situation where she didn't know better. She couldn't have done any better, because some women, they stay in their abusive relationship because of economic reasons. They can't leave. They have nowhere to go. So I don't know if that was her case. So part of me was just hoping this guy was going to change. I kept thinking, okay, Sabrina, if he had hit you because you were talking to this guy, friendly conversation, maybe you just shouldn't be talking to anyone. So I kept trying to change me in the hopes that it would have changed him. So some folks were talking about it, but they
Wow, that's a very, very good point.
exactly. So some folks were talking about it, but they talked about it behind my back, not necessarily to me. But then after
Right.
we broke up, then they felt a little bit more open. So they wanted to come and say something. And then some folks, they saw it as a private matter, so they wouldn't have said anything. And then at the end
Right.
of the day, you can't even really blame anyone for the situation you were in, but you were hoping that folks that were older than you, or the folks that were raising you, would have at least tried to help more. But
Right.
I remember one day when he hit me in front of my dad and also in front of my older cousin. This
Wow.
after we broke up, and I thought I was free. I was working at a school, and I was going to an event to help out this parent with some children at a party. And I was sitting waiting for my ride, and he came up from behind me that he said someone called him and told him I was dressed up, I was going somewhere. I'm thinking, I can dress up and go wherever I want to go because I'm free. And he came around and punched me so hard in my stomach. I was so cramped and hurt. And my dad had gotten a stroke like years before during that time. So he couldn't move very fast. He was so shocked because he didn't even know I was being abused like before that. So that was his first time of him seeing it. And he was running around trying to get a tool to deal with this guy. And by the time he ran inside, he just started crying. And that image alone broke me. Like
Wow.
I had to get away from this guy, because that was breaking my father's heart, and he couldn't do anything. And so my cousin tried to fight him, and I went to the police station. And the police officer said to me, if you go home and work it out with him, things will be okay. So then you have
Wow.
law enforcement that are a part of this. They think it's just a little thing, and I'm thinking, this guy is going to kill me. And so I had to literally move from the community, because I realized each time he would see me, he would try to create some kind of problems. Even though he was moving on with his life, I wasn't allowed to move on. It was like a method of control. And
Wow.
so you have people who try to get involved and it was too deep, or he would create such a story. Oh my God, he was such a good guy, in a way where he could create a story in such a way where, the guys who believe it was hurtful for women to talk to other men, when he tell them that story, I was talking to some guy, they would be like, yes, she deserved that. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so the only thing I can say for people to get out of that situation is to understand that you have to love yourself more.
Mhm.
You have to start from there. You have to understand that there is nothing you do that warrant this kind of treatment from anybody. It doesn't matter if they're related to you or not. It doesn't matter if you have 10 children together. And then that's another thing that happened with abusive relationship. People will stay because they're like, oh, I don't want my children to grow up without a dad or a mom. If you're gonna stay in it and watch the abuse go on, and the child is gonna abuse and then become an abuser also. So you have to get away from it early. You don't need to be with your child's father if they're hurting you, or your child's mother.
Right.
You don't have to. You're not saving the child. You need to save yourself. If you don't save yourself, how are you gonna save the child? You see what I'm saying? And there are many cases
Right.
that I learn about where the abusers kill their victims and leave their children. It's then I remember one day when he hit me when I had my older son on my hip. And that was like another wake up call for me. That was the first time we actually truly broke up. I had the child on my hip. The child was just about to be 2. And gave me one slap across my face. I could not close my mouth for a couple of days. And people didn't know about it. And I put that child on and I said, no, this is not what I want to happen. So you start looking into protecting yourself and protecting your offspring. Because I'm like, this is not what I want. And so I started to become defensive physically, emotionally, and all the other alleys. And I remember one day crying in my room so hard that I thought I was just gonna die from trying so hard to let him understand that, hey, this is not right. And nothing I did was working. And I remember my grandma saying to me, because she's the only one grandma I know, because I've never met anyone from my dad's side. And
Yes.
she said, are you going to stay in this room and cry all day about this worthless guy and whatever? And I just couldn't understand why she just didn't understand, yes, this was okay, you know. And then I got up and I sat, and I remember looking into the mirror. I sat directly in front of the mirror and said, this is not right. And I remember speaking to myself. I had to have a conversation with myself. And I said, I have to do something about this. And I remember cutting off my hair, starting to eat better, exercising, trying to build an image that is going to help me feel even better. I started choosing different friends and doing different activities just to get myself away from what I was feeling, because it was consuming me. It became such a part of me that I was like, oh my God, my life will never change.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I think the only thing you can do is to start with yourself and understand that this is something you have to really want to change, you know, and then love yourself enough to want to move away out of it. And then if you're not able to do it alone, seek help. There is always a line you can call, someone you can reach out to, because my girlfriend who ran away from her, and I know her personally, when she ran away from her husband, she had to drive away to a different place and stayed with another friend until she was able to fly away. So sometimes to save your life, you have to physically leave. And she has more than 2 children for him, and just kept thinking, okay, he's going to change. No, it doesn't matter how many children you have. They don't love you or love those children enough to want to do anything different. So stop.
Because they are sick. They are sick.
It's something that they need therapy for.
Yes.
And so they will find different means of getting their abuse going. So they finish with you, they will move on to their next victim. They may not hit them as much as they hit you, but they have different ways that they're using them, stopping them from seeing their family, stuff like that. There's so many forms of abuse, but the physical abuse, you know, oh my goodness, that one, you know, was one that really shocked me to my core, because that's something I just never thought would happen to me. And a lot of women really have that belief too. Oh, that couldn't happen to me. There's
like this and once you end the situation, at that point, they're thinking, this is not happening to me.
Right.
Like you can't believe it could happen to you. And then once you in it, you're thinking, this is not happening to me, not me.
Yeah,
Constant denial. But I want to talk about I want to just kind of mention, you talked about how he hit you while your son was on your hip. So how had that affected your son?
Well,
had you even had that conversation with him
at that
because he was young?
At that point, him being so young is he never had enough language yet or understanding yet to understand like half of what was happening. I'm sure he saw what happened, and he probably have thought that maybe that isn't right. But as he got older, we spoke about it, but not in details. And even though he's an adult now, we have spoken about it like just a few times, but I've not given him like all the details as to stuff. But he's aware of what caused us not to be together. And I want him to understand that that is not okay. Even if you end up with like a woman that you're having issue with, or she doesn't like certain ways of you don't need to hit her, and she doesn't need to hit you. So that's what I want him to understand. So it's just your hope that what they're going to take that information and do with it as they get older, you're hoping they're going to make it work for them and that they're going to do better, because you don't, I'm happy that he stopped seeing it quite early. I didn't want him to be 10 years old where he would have been older and being able to know to understand that, hey, this is whatever. So I'm happy he saw it at that time. I wished he hadn't, but then I had no control at the time over it, because I couldn't even predict some of the time when this guy was going to become violent. You could do it softly, and so I couldn't predict what was going to happen. And so I'm happy I took him out of that situation early enough to not, absorb too much of it, to, to learn that this is a part of a behavior that is possible. So I'm happy he didn't see it, further up. And he's not seeing any of that now. So
Right.
And he has now joined a part of the army, and I'm kind of hoping that he will get some further training, knowledge, and understanding about discipline and interactions and life in general, and how you communicate with people. You don't need to yell and shout and fight and push and whatever. Enough of that. You don't need to be a part of it. So there are different directions your life can take. So that's the hope,
If all wounds were visible, like everyone said, you're so beautiful though, but you're so pretty.
Thinking that it stops there, right?
And, yeah, as if it stops there. If all wounds were visible with Sabrina Henry, where can we find your book?
So you can find my book on Amazon. I've sold a lot of copies, and I really hope to be selling more. And it's not even about the sales, but just to get people to get the message.
Yeah, because like I said, it's not just this book. It's not just a story.
Mm-hmm.
It's informational.
Mm-hmm.
It's informative.
Mm-hmm.
And
because I do ideas of how to heal, how to help.
Right.
To heal. Yeah.
Right. So you take us through your journey, but you also show us the healing process in that also. Mm-hmm. So I really do appreciate this book, and thank you so much for coming on. We're gonna have you to come back, and you're gonna have to invite us into your kitchen. Oh, and you're gonna have to invite us into your kitchen and show us these big meals that you share with everyone on the internet. Okay.
I actually started a recipe book. I just haven't gotten the chance to.
Oh no! Really?
Like earlier this year, but I just need to.
You're way behind. You should have done that a long time ago.
Ooh, I've been doing so many things. I'm like trying to slow down and get everything going one at a time. But getting there. But thank you for having me, and I really enjoyed this experience, because part of my purpose here with this book and also in life is to get people to do better as a human being. Yes. And make themselves understand that pain is not something you should tolerate, or, especially pain that was brought on by somebody else. It's something to be against, and try to let your children and your grandchildren, everybody understand that, this is a part of the healing for the world, is for us to stop harming each other. From a very young age, you have to stop it, cut it out.
Yeah. And, and if we're going to start back over again, but you should not punish yourself because of someone else's issues. Exactly. And punish yourself because they're not choosing to do anything about it. They're not choosing to heal themselves. They're not choosing to get help. And so because you're not choosing to get help, I cannot be the recipient of your hurt and your pain, period. That's just it.
You be succumbing yourself to it. That's the bottom line, pretty much.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on Arise Show, and we got to have you again. Bye.
All right, you take care.